I just never fit in. I was always my own drummer out there by myself. The only thing that was sad for me was that I did want to be on stage, and that was very frustrating for me. I thought in my heart somewhere that that was meant for me, but I never got it. When I got to college, and I did a small play in first year, but senior year was a big audition for the largest play that Shakespeare wrote. And like I'd always done, I auditioned. And I go to the call board expecting to see my name under chorus or townsperson number 3. And I'm looking and I didn't even make that. And I remember that moment where me and my intuition were like, told ya, it's not right for you. And something said, but that can't be. You hear it in your head. And so I looked at the very top of the call board next to the name Rosalind, the character, and there was my name. And it was at that moment I called my parents and said, I love you both very much. And thank you for thinking I was going to be a lawyer. But I wanted to play a lawyer. I wanted to be Perry Mason. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stand here and say, I want to be an actress.
Today's podcast guest is with author, award-winning television personality, and entrepreneur Forbes Riley, who has used her intuition to become a household name when it came to television and going on to inspire so many others to turn their dreams into reality. In this podcast interview, Forbes and I talk about her rise to fame and how her success was about leveraging her intuition to shut out the ego and going within to believe in herself, which was the reason she was able to open one door of opportunity after another. In the show notes, I have a link to a website page where you can find out more about Forbes, her website, and her social media profiles. Also in the show notes is a link to my free 7-day challenge that is going to help you find out how to use your intuitive signals to leave behind relationships that hold you back from your success in under 14 seconds. Here's my interview with Forbes Riley.
Well, let's dive right into the questions. I'll get you to start by introducing yourself and telling others what you do.
Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley. And my latest thing is if you don't know who I am, Google it. I always want to get to a point where I didn't have to say my past, my credits, that people would know it. And at some point you will. The truth is, many of you have grown up with me. You didn't realize it. I've been the staple on late night television for the last 30 years. I've done 189 infomercials, everything from the Jacqueline Juicer, Montel Williams. I work with George Foreman, and the list, Mario Lopez, Florence Henderson, the list goes on and on and on. And then between that and home shopping television, at some point you couldn't not turn on the TV and find me every hour of every day somewhere. Right. That was a crazy time in my life. The other thing, though, is I've always wanted to just be an actress. And the fun news is I just got the lead in a television series, which I have not had in a long time.
Oh, congratulations.
So I am thrilled to be heading up to Canada, knock on wood. Hopefully all that goes. Fingers crossed.
Excellent.
But I started out life as an awkward, goofy little girl. I had 2 wonderful parents, but I got hit in the face with a baseball bat, and I had a very odd broken nose that nobody fixed. And the funny thing is, my son has that now. And it's like, now I understand how it happened. Like at some point he must have broken his nose. He's going to need it fixed at some point because it's got kind of a weird bump on it. But as a girl, it's very unflattering. You mix that with 8 years of full railroad braces and a tongue crusher at one point where I was talking like this. And I was overweight. I was bullied about that. I was very smart. I was bullied about that. I will tell you, the best thing I've done in my later years is become a speaker and have a chance to go back to my past and analyze going, oh, you had a pretty crappy. That's why you, and then to kind of iron some of that out and make stories out of it so that it no longer haunts me. And I've devoted a lot of my life right now to teaching and coaching. I have a program that I personally do called Breakthrough. And I challenge anyone, I've done this for 20 years now, who's got something that's holding them back. If you had a mom and dad, you have something holding you back. It doesn't matter who you are. And the tragic part of this is that you'd be surprised at how many young people endured massive sexual violation, molestation, rape, torture, and they're walking around looking just like you and me.
Yep.
Only they're not. So that's a safe haven for people who are struggling. And sometimes it doesn't matter what happened to you. It's actually the decision that you made about life. So it could be something as, falling out of a tree like one of my students did. And he made a decision. Strangers took him to the hospital, but he decided that mom and dad are never there and they're horrible. And he became a drug addict and he's dead. And you're like, well, he could have made a very different decision, but he didn't. And that seems to be something that is fixable for everyone.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. And, great intro, by the way. A lot of these links I'm going to be putting in the show notes. And I always start each interview guest with 2 questions. What's your definition of intuition? What do you think it is?
Oh, I know what it is. It's that little voice inside of you that you sometimes don't listen to and you always regret when you don't. It is your connection to whatever source you call. And I will tell you, when you get quiet and you listen to it, it'll always talk to you. Not always in the way you want. I've actually found a unique way to access it. You can actually write out a note. And you can ask yourself, if I knew what to do here, what would it be? And then let your pen keep writing. And it's a fascinating system that you are this bundle of energy. The other thing that I've separated out lately, and I now really teach this notion. I am a hypnotist. I've been an actress my entire life. I was a professional magician at the age of 15. I have a very unique way of looking at the human brain. I'm very clear that you have a conscious and a subconscious. Your conscious, and I now call the CEO. The CEO is a pretty flaming out there crazy person. What do I want to eat next? Oh, let's go we always have to do, and the yakety yak, right? Everyone else in the company, from the executives to the managers to the janitors, that's the part of your being that you have no control over. You didn't make your hair last night. You didn't put water in your eyes or digestive juices. You didn't do any of that, I'm sure. And it happens. And then one day I realized I was pregnant with twins. Now I know the moment it happened because that was fun. And I know the moment I pushed them out, not quite so much fun. Everything in between for 9.5 months, I had nothing to do with. I literally sat there and said, okay, it's all working. How does it work? Well, let's imagine for a second that there's a foreman of your underground, a foreman of the subconscious, little guy, little, doesn't matter who it is. That one entity is in charge of everything. And so when you as the CEO go, we can't do that, the woman's like, okay, hang on, we can't do this. Make sure that she trips because we can't do this. Every time you tell your subconscious what you're not good at, you're not enough. She said, we're not enough. Okay, we're not enough. No. Make the adrenaline pump. Get nervous a lot because we're not enough. Imagine the confusing signals, and then you wonder why you're not enough and why you can't do things. You're like, wait a second, what happened here? And the worst that you do is you deal with fear. Oh, I'm so afraid. Worry, by the way, is afraid of things that aren't real. So now you go, hey, we're worried about that. Okay, everybody, we're worried. Okay, don't wait. We sweat a lot for no reason at all. We get sick to our stomach. Yeah, that's okay. No, don't push out the poop. We're worried. You're constipated. That's good. Okay. And all of a sudden, this dialogue happens that you actually have a lot more control over than you realized. And if you just stop for a second, listen to your intuition, listen to your inner, and say, wait a second. Hey, I'm sorry, buddy. You know what? I've been really mean to you. I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through the rest of this life. I'm going to love on you. I'm going to tell you that you're awesome. You should feed everybody down there. Treat them nice. No. I promise we will go to the gym because you want to move a little bit. I got it. You're kind of rusty. And take better care of your foreman. They'll take better care of you.
Absolutely. This great segue into the next question. Intuition speaks to you through things called intuitive signals. These signals are very unique to each and every single one of us. And you mentioned this voice as well. When you're trusting intuition, is it still a voice, or what does it feel in the moment that you know this is the right decision at that exact moment? Characterize it.
Well, we call it gut instinct because you can feel it in your stomach. You can feel it in your soul. I don't think that everyone's connected to their intuition. It's there. Mm-hmm. You're connected to all the kinds of things if you want to be. I mean, I'm connected to magical things happening. You want to manifest something? Ask me about it. I'm like the queen of manifestation.
Absolutely.
And that is just putting, intuition out into the world. Yep. So it could be gut instinct. But, the problem with intuition is that it bumped into permission. And you've been denied that most of your life. A kid has heard the word no 400 times a day on average.
Wow.
And so if you were, as a kid, wanting to try something, you're met with no, and all of a sudden you're like, well, do I trust the mom and dad that are supposed to be there for me? Do I trust society? Do I trust my culture? Do I trust my religion? My heart's saying this, but they're saying that. What do I do? And I think that it's literally that humanity now is all about intuition busters. Don't listen to your heart. Don't listen to what you know is true. Believe what you read. Believe what you're told. We'll bully you if you don't believe it.
Right.
And all of a sudden you begin to second doubt yourself. And that's, I think, the downfall of a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah, very well put. When you're ignoring your intuition in the rare circumstances that you are, how does it feel? What are those signals?
Well, that's the word regret. And those are things that you will regret in that moment. So I remember a funny story. I'm very starstruck. At 16, I had a chance to meet Bob Hope, and I had a hard time seeing the fact that there wasn't a movie screen in between me and him, that he could be a real person. I had a chance to kiss John Travolta at the Academy Awards. Again, how did I get there? But there was a moment in Hollywood, and I remember George Clooney was way down there, and just one of those guys that wouldn't it be nice to have met him. And it was one of the first times I didn't do anything. And I stood there and my intuition was like, just go say hi. And something in my head's like, oh, no, you can't. And all these things were, and I just walked away. And I don't know why that one thing stuck with me. I probably have a lot of those moments if I got quiet and remember the times when I didn't act. But the thing about me is intuition and I we go hand in hand. We have had a tremendous relationship. I call it being outrageous. My intuition goes, go do that. I'm like, okay, we're going to do that. It was pretty amazing when you have, I did that with Grant Cardone. I walked up to him and I made myself known and I ended up on the stage in front of 10,000 people because of my intuition said, go for it. And so often we talk about this thing called thinking outside the box. I believe your intuition only lives outside the box. So if you're a box person, if you obey the rules all the time, you are taught not to listen to your intuition. And that, my friends, will be on your deathbed what you end up regretting. You only regret the shots you didn't take.
Absolutely. I know Dr. Bill Dorfman's a friend of yours. And I remember in his interview with me, he was telling me that when he was on Oprah, he didn't know there was a box. Right? That's just the way he operated. And that's the reason for a lot of his successes.
I've met his mom and dad. And I will tell you, they are very out there loving people.
Amazing.
And I think you do have to have a very strong foundation and or bump into someone like me or Bill or you and maybe go through a seminar. That's one of the things that healed my heart.
Right.
And allowed me to break through finding mentors and coaches who didn't think like everybody else.
Right. Absolutely. How young were you when you had your first intuitive experience?
Oh, dear gosh. That's an interesting question. How young intuitive? Well, see, I'm wired this way because I don't think I had a choice. I was a very lonely little girl. By lonely, I don't mean serious loner. Like I could go months. I didn't have a lot of friends. I watched a lot of television and movies. I adored my parents and I did a lot of schoolwork. Because as soon as you said that, I was flashing on being 8 years old and I built my first computer with my dad. He was a magician. And I had to go to school and stand up in front of everyone and tell them that the schematic that I'm holding with all the transistors and all the connections and all the magnetic relays was my idea. And apparently I had no issue doing that because my intuition just went going, you've got this. This is your faith in your dad. This is something that's otherworldly. And I would tell stories. And that was part of that sense of intuition. The same happened and it's about me talking to me. So I am very glad that I didn't have a lot of kids around me, except for a couple of bullies, but I didn't depend on any girlfriends. I didn't chit chat about boys. I only listened to my inner voice. And we've had quite an interesting conversation. My inner voice and I went all around Europe on $20 a day with a book called Arthur Frommer's $20 a day with a backpack, a Walkman, 2 cassette tapes, and my dad's camera. And survived 6 months on my own. Wow. Now that's a very odd concept. Why would you go do that? I have another moment that's actually an intuition moment. I made so much money when I was in Manhattan that I owned my own car. Very hard to do that. But I, again, listened a lot to my intuition. And one day I wanted to go away. And I got in my car and I was driving up to not a bed, long before Airbnb, but a bed and breakfast. And my intuition, and again, said something, and I had this pamphlet in the car seat about an ashram. I don't come from Ashramville. I don't know what any of that means. And my intuition said, go left at the fork, and that's where you're going. And I ended up at this place that I stayed on and off for a year, and I learned to chant. I learned to do seva, where you do work where you don't get to speak, where you eat all vegetarian, where I met some fun celebrities like Lisa Bonet and other people, Patrick O'Neill, and sat with a Guru Mai, that nice little Jewish girl from Long Island hanging out with Guru Mai. You're like, that was pure intuition. Now, is that guidance? Is that energy? Who knows? All I know is today, I found myself playing a song that we chanted to. Now, this is going back 30 years. I haven't really focused on this, but all of a sudden, the connection to that time in my life, which was very open and very spiritual and a lot of vibration. When you chant, it's all about vibration. And I was singing this song, Jota Se Jota, in Hindu. I don't speak Hindu, but I know that song. And thought that was a sense of intuition.
Amazing. Now, you grew up being overweight, you had a broken nose, and you had a number of issues when you were younger. Yet you were still able to really be in touch with your intuitive ability. Was there a conflict between trying to fit in and trying to just be yourself because fitting in just wasn't for you. How did that shape your intuitive ability?
You know what's funny? I just never fit in anywhere.
That's great.
I was always my own drummer out there by myself.
Yep.
And this is bizarre because it allowed me to do everything I've done. It allowed me to keep going because there was no one to check back in with. I've never had a job. I've never worked for a company. I was not part of any sports team. My dad had a horrible accident when I was in high school. And every day after high school, we'd go to the hospital. So I was never part of anything where the only thing that was sad for me was that I did want to be on stage. And my high school did a lot of musicals. And there were two girls, Renee Polina and Ann Casapini, both gorgeous, both could sing, both got the leads in everything. And that was very frustrating for me. I thought in my heart somewhere that was meant for me, but I never got it. And very frustrating. And so when I got to college, I tell the story of how I was going to be a lawyer. And I did a small play in first year, but senior year was a big audition for the largest play that Shakespeare wrote called As You Like It. The female lead was on stage for 2.5 hours. She plays a man. She does everything. And like I'd always done, I auditioned. And I go to the call board expecting to see my name under chorus or townsperson number 3. And I'm looking and I didn't even make that. And I remember that moment where me and my intuition were like, told ya, it's not right for you. And something said, but that can't be. You hear it in your head. And so I looked at the very top of the call board next to the name Rosalind, the character, and there was my name.
Wow.
And that moment of going, told you, I'm like, wait. And I remember walking into Professor Richmond's office, David Richmond, and I said, I don't understand. Did you make I almost want to say, did you make a mistake? I hope I didn't say that. But I said, why did you choose me? Why now? Why this? And he sat me down and he said, because what I see inside of you is more pain, more communication, more skill. You are my ideal Rosalind. Now, you want to know something crazy about Professor David Richmond? He was 100% legally blind.
Wow.
So this man is looking at me, but he can't see all the bullshit that people judged me on my entire life up until that point. And I did the show and it was a raging success. And I still have those reviews in my office. And it was at that moment, I called my parents and said, I love you both very much. And thank you for thinking I was going to be a lawyer, but I wanted to play a lawyer. I wanted to be Perry Mason. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stand here and say, I want to be an actress. And I thought the phone was just going to explode. And my parents, in their sweet, wonderful, slightly regretful, said, we're going to believe in you no matter what you want to do. You know, we can't help you a whole lot. You're kind of on your own. And I went off to New York on my own and I thrived. And I thrived in the craziest of ways. I mean, this is where your intuition kicks in. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't know what to do. I answered an ad in the New York Times to be a social secretary for a billionaire, W.R. Grace. And I had zero social skills. I knew nothing. We had green plastic couches in our living room. I eat with my fingers and I don't have any manners whatsoever. And I got this job. And I always got jobs like that because nothing was to stop me. This is what I wanted. I wanted to learn. And Mrs. Grace, at one point, we're in the car going to the racket club, wherever we were going. And she turns to me and said, you need to get Louis Vuitton out of the trunk. And I turned to her and said, I'm sorry, who's in the trunk? And she looked at me and she said, oh, you'll learn. And I did. I actually studied the people that I lived with. I lived in a tiny little maid's closet, like literally closet. And I ate it up. And I was, again, talk about feeling a fish out of water. We entertained barons and earls and princes for dinner. And again, they would hang out with me in the kitchen because I was real, because I was honest, because I was fun. And I began to think that maybe if I learn what I need to learn, I'm not going to lose who I was, because I'm never going to be stuck up. I'm never going to be stuffy. I can't. I just don't have those things in my soul. And so when people say to me, oh, Forbes, you're so much nicer than I would have imagined because you're now well known, I know your name. Like, these things didn't change for me. It doesn't matter whether I have money or don't have money. That's a funny thing. I've always had money. I've always managed to work and create what I needed. And I'm weirdly ballsy. I don't even know where any of this came from. I'm going to blame it all on intuition. I went off to work for Club Med. I went to go to a Club Med at one point. I fell in love with the environment, but there were things that needed to be fixed. I'm 26 years old, right? I go into Manhattan. I knock on the Club Med office door. Now, if you knew the rules, you would, you need to apply and put in an application or whatever. I walk in, tell the assistant, the secretary there, I would like to see the vice president, please. I have some things that need to be changed at your Club Med. And she was like, you have an appointment? I said, he'll want to see me. Who gives you permission to say that? Next thing I know, I'm sitting in John Shelley's corner office, and he's like, how can I help you? I said, well, look, I'm a Broadway actress and a dancer. I just left your Club Med, and I got to tell you, there's things that need to be different. You do this, 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 and I don't think the audience really appreciated that. You've got French sense of humor, American sensibility, and they just weren't mixing. And he looks at me and he says, how long could you go away for? I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He said, well, we have a club in Mexico that needs someone to help organize the entertainment portion. Are you available? Next thing I know, I'm on a plane. And that started a whole career working on and off for Club Med. So if you don't know there's a box, you just do what you do. So I'm going to say that the box, that culture, your parents, that's the death of intuition.
And you actually have to take those steps, right? Because one of the things I say is when you take care of the inputs, the outputs take care of themselves, and you have to take the steps to open the doors of opportunity. And there's 4 intuitive hurdles that I talk about in my book and in my coaching, and that's fear. There's being too emotional, being too rational, and having an ego. And I remember one of the stories you talked about, and a lot of it about shedding your ego when you had that professor select you is because there's no ego about you. It's about what's inside. But you hired an image consultant that got through your ego. And you had a lot of ego. You didn't like the advice that he said to you, but
no, this was that's interesting. It's not just about ego. That's funny that you said that. You know, I don't know that I've ever had enough ego.
Okay.
If I did, I would have had my name on products a long time ago. I never thought that I mattered enough.
Right. Okay.
You know, I watched Tony Little put his name and Denise. I could have done that. I just didn't because I didn't think I mattered. So maybe there's a little bit of lack of ego. I do think I'm right a lot of the time. Turns out that I am. Now, that's not a very nice quality.
No, but there's a difference between self-confidence and ego. It could be a fine line because you have a lot of self-confidence. That's different than ego. Ego is you're doing it, but you know that you're not doing it for the right reasons. You have a lot of self-confidence because you know you're doing it for the right reasons.
You know, it looks like I have a lot of self-confidence now. I would love to take that Scrooge journey back through my life and actually look at how I behaved from some of that because I don't really know. I will tell you, though, that there's a story about how my name came about and how I met this image consultant.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger story about ego that I will share with you.
Sure.
And that comes in with, I took my first seminar when I was 31 years old.
Okay.
And I just wanted to be an actress. I just wanted what I wanted. And I didn't have a lot of social skills. So I think kind of like certain autistic kids, I must have come off offensive to people. They were like, oh, you're a user. I'm like, I'm not using you. I just don't know how else to be. I've never had friends. And that's not a joke. And so I went to a party one day in my early 30s, and this gentleman comes to me and says, my friends don't really like you. And I thought, who cares? They're not producers. They can't hire me. And it was because the other thing I learned about myself through a TED Talk is about being an extroverted introvert. If you are that, you don't like small talk. Right. So often I come across as rude because I don't want to talk about sports or the weather or politics. I'll talk about marketing. I'll talk about, emotional healing. I'll talk about all kinds of things, but not typical party small talk. So I never really fit in. So I don't stay. I don't drink, and I don't do parties at all. I don't do well at parties. I'm always trying to fix somebody, or I do magic tricks, or I take this out and I will do this because it makes me feel comfortable. I know I'm a little wacky, right? So he says, my friends don't like you. And I said, well, okay, whatever. And he said, well, there's this seminar that I think you should go to. And I'm like, you trying to sell me something? And he said, well, yeah, it's $400. This was a long time ago. I'm like, well, that's a lot of money. And I had no relationship to money back then. So it was a lot of money for something I don't know. And I said, I'm not going to go to that. He said, well, I'll pay for you. Now, this was a defining moment in my life. What do you mean you're going to pay for me? You don't even really know me. And my limiting belief was, if you're going to pay for me, you're going to want to sleep with me. You're going to want something in return, and that's all I have. And turns out that's not what he wanted. Careful how you project on other people. He just wanted me to experience something so wonderful. Now, no one had ever done that for me before. I didn't even understand this. I go to this seminar. I now teach seminars because I loved it so much. And all of a sudden, you're in a room with strangers, and concepts are being talked, and exercises are being done, and music is being played. And it was healing and emotional. I cried, and I loved it. And the crazy thing was, I then did the advanced part of that. The Saturday night of that advanced training, is one of the top 5 nights of my entire life. That's up there with getting married, having babies, falling in love, whatever you want to say is really monumental. But the day during that day, before that night was the worst day of my life. So that night, it was towards the end of the seminar. They had portioned off people and everyone got a song and they got to sing and dance and perform. They were going to do that. I can't wait for my song because I could just perform and do all these things. And they got down to the 4 of us that were left and they didn't give us a song. They said, you need to go get 2 maids and 2 butler outfits and get money from everyone and go buy a buffet and come back within 2 hours. So we come back in little costumes. I'm still waiting for my song. And he says to us, put all the food out, put the maids' costumes on, and you are not to talk to anybody all night long. You are to only clean up the mess they make, and you're not to say a word. Wow. And I'm like, but go, okay? So I put the little maid's costume on, and I'm thinking, this guy's an idiot. You don't know who I am. You've made a horrible mistake. The most talented person in the room is cleaning up people's crap. All right, this is stupid. And then I go back to all my limiting beliefs. Screw the guy who invited me. This all sucks. And then part of me said, why don't you just leave? You said you'd stay, but you should leave. And in my head, every fiber of my being is convinced that this is just horrible. And it builds up because now people have spilled things on the floor. And if you've ever met me, I don't like to clean up even my own stuff. So this is really irking me. At midnight, all the singing and dancing is done. And I'm like fuming. Steam's coming out of my ears. And he says, all right, you did a good job. Everyone, Dad, take off your shoes. And we're going to blindfold you. And I'm thinking, this is a cult and they're going to beat me. This is really, what am I doing here? And they walk us into this room and this music is playing and the song is This Is the Moment. And it's a very baritone operatic kind of song that's saying all the scheming and screaming you've done in your life is coming to this moment. And I sit down and something's washing my feet and something's in my hand and it's a bouquet of flowers and they undo the blindfold. And the 4 of us are sitting on these pedestals. There's 75 people below us on their knees looking up at us, kind of listening to the music. And the big trainer is washing my feet and I'm looking at him going, and he looks at me, he's like, you don't get it, do you? And I'm like, no. And he said, we don't always do this particular stretch, but we identified the 4 of you as very powerful leaders. And to be an effective leader, you must first learn to serve.
Wow.
And my entire life has never been the same.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know.
Wow.
I listen to that song at any moment where I need to remember why I'm here and what I can do for other people. You want to talk about ego less? I just have to think about that. Running around in a maid's outfit, picking up other people's crap, even though I'm a leader. Yeah, that's how you serve other people. You put your ego in the back room.
What a very powerful story. Holy moly. Your grandmother changed her last name to Forbes because her son couldn't get into engineering school because he was Jewish. And on other podcasts, you mentioned that this name meant that you did whatever it took to succeed in life. What was the first success you had right after changing your name?
Oh God. Oh my God. All right. So I love that you found that story. So the whole name thing was really freaking bizarre to me. Names in my culture mean so much. Mm-hmm. My first name is Francine. My mother, who's very religious, named me after, you have to name after somebody who's passed away. That was her favorite aunt. My middle name is her last name, her maiden name.
Okay.
Now, let's go back to that moment for a second, because when I grew up, everyone had Bobby Sue, Bobby Joe, and Sue. I had the middle name of Kadish. That's a stupid middle name.
Okay.
I hated it. I absolutely hated it. In fact, if I had been born, my whole name would have been Francine Kadish Feinstein Forbes.
Wow. Okay.
Huh? And so there was always a thing about names in my world. And so when I went to this image consultant that you hit on before, and one of the things he wanted to change was my name. And I thought, no, dude, my mom loves this name. Francine Forbes has a ring to it. I've already been on soap operas and starred in movies. It's a nice name. Why are you you can pick on the hair and the clothes, but my name, I was so pissed. And he said, oh, Francine is it's too old a name for you. Now, you have to bear in mind, in Hollywood, Norma Jean Baker became Marilyn Monroe, and Tony Curtis's name was some silly thing, and John Wayne's first name was Marion. So names have an interesting thing. Now, for everybody listening, your name really does define who you are more than you realize, and it's changeable. And if you're a woman, you're so screwed, because now you got to change your name in mid-career to some guy's name. Very strange how we do that, yes? Yeah. But think about it. Angelina Jolie. It's kind of sexy. Can you imagine Angelina Jolie? Her name is Esther Birnbaum. Now, I'm not insulting Esther Birnbaum,
right,
but it's not quite as sexy.
Yes.
And so there's a ring and a flair to names. So I, in fact, do change my name at the suggestion of this image consultant, and it's freaking weird. Forbes Riley sounds like a law firm. I mean, you know me this way, but when I first heard this, like when you've got one name your whole life and all of a sudden, but I did everything she said. This is the big part of this. It's actually of both stories. It's the word surrender. If you're going to trust, by the way, even if you don't trust somebody, go down a road because they might know more than you. And I've done a lot of things that most people will never do in terms of creating the persona. There was a guy many years ago who was an essence teacher. I learned about my essence.
Okay.
You actually went with a partner to the airport with 200 words, and my partner would stand over there. I'd find somebody going, hey, we're part of a psychological study for UCLA. See that guy there? Will you circle the 15 words that describe him? He'd then go change his clothes, and I'd find someone else. Would you circle the 15 words? And you would then come back, and over a matter of weeks, you would put together your essence. It's a crazy thing, but when you think about it, that's what Hollywood does. And it's so minute, the work that I have done. This is why when I teach my students, they're like, how do you know that? Because if you look at the essence of certain movie stars, so the essence, what's the difference between, and I'm going back a couple of years, Kevin Costner and Mel Gibson? Do you know the difference? But they're both leading men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the difference between them?
Well, one's quieter, one's a lot more rambunctious.
Well, that's one essence, yes. The other is a loner, while the other one is a leader of men. Now, watch how this plays out in their movies. So Kevin ends up doing Dances with Wolves kind of by himself. Does the Aquaman, the water movie, Waterworld, by himself. Mm-hmm. Does the Postman by himself.
Yes.
He's by himself a lot. Then you got Mel Gibson over here who is leading Braveheart, who's leading Patriot. And so the essence kind of speaks to when they're in their own right essence, those movies are wildly successful.
Right.
When they don't do that, you don't remember those movies because they didn't play the essence of who they really are. And this helped informed a lot of the work. Again, I've done a lot of work on me creating this Forbes Riley character. But that first day, I surrendered to everything. I got my clothes done. I did my hair different. I did my makeup differently. And I had my new headshot with my new name on it. And the universe is very funny. I'm sitting in a casting director workshop. Now, that's a room where you have a lot of actors who pay money to meet a casting director, hoping they'll like you to put there in their project. And so I'm sitting in the front row. A couple things that this image consultant told me that I just hated. You're in autumn. Given that your skin is yellow, I didn't even know that. You look better in browns. In fact, I'm in black right now. If I put a brown on, you'd love me even more.
Okay.
Brown and green, olive green are colors that make, but I don't personally like those colors. Doesn't matter. I look better in them. And so I'm sitting there, and I can remember this like it was yesterday, 30 some odd years ago, in an olive green jacket with a big, thick belt. My hair and makeup is really done, and I'm put together, and I'm sitting there. Well, somebody in the back of the room raised his hand and said, excuse me, casting director, what should you wear to an audition? And this woman looks right at me, and she says, what's your name? And I'm like, Forbes Riley. She said, I'm sorry? I'm like, Forbes Riley. And she's like, oh, cute name. And I'm like, I'd never said it out loud before. And she said, stand up. And I stood up and she said, see what she's wearing? She looks professional, but hip and put together. This is a really wonderful outfit. Nice to meet you. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. And then she let me read a scene from a very sexy movie called Body Heat. And the next day she calls me in and I book a TV series. Did it all work? Yeah. In fact, I changed my name about 30 years ago. There is not a day that goes by that someone doesn't comment on Forbes Riley. How's that possible? So the crazy thing is it's easy to look back and see the story, but when you're going through it, go through it. I put my ego aside. I listened to what somebody told me, and I did the work that a coach, not me, said go and do. And I'm just thinking right now, ever watch Karate Kid? Why am I waxing on and waxing up? Do what the coach says to do.
Yes.
Don't fight it. And that's what a lot of my students, people now are very entitled, very ego driven. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that homework. I'm like, then leave. Is it embarrassing? Is it weird? Yeah. Is it you should trust the fact that I've spent enough time to think about you and that this is where you might have some growth. And in fact, I'll honor two of my students. I'll even say their name, Mel and Michelle, but I gave them an assignment that I knew they were both going to go, no way. And they did. And then they went through the assignment, and it's now like, the calm after the storm. It's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for standing for me and believing that I needed to go through that. Mm. In fact, I say very often in my teachings that a friend loves you the way you are. Forbes Riley loves you way too much to leave you that way.
Wow. You raised a young man who was murdered on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, dude, you've got my entire life history here. Oh, you're gonna, congratulations to you. Did you get an A in college? Were you an A student?
I'm not sure. I didn't pay attention too much to my grades. I just paid attention to me and what I wanted.
Yeah, no, you're very good.
What happened around that incident, and how did it affect your ability, your intuitive ability?
The problem right now is it's really hard, given the climate of the world, to even think about Dexter. Because Dexter was black. And Dexter was murdered by another black kid. The only difference between Dexter and that kid was the kid who killed him didn't have a mentor. Didn't have somebody who believed in him like I believed in Dexter. My ex-husband and I, we kept him out of gangs. He had no tattoos. He had no children. The kid who killed him by the time he was 18 was full of tattoos, already had 2 kids out of wedlock, and wanted to get into a gang so he could belong. It's an interesting story because, again, in hindsight, for 12 years, Dexter was in my life. And I grew up with 2 parents who were very racist. They were racist against everybody.
Wow.
And as Jews, I'm like, you do know everybody hates you too, right? Just to be really clear about this. But their parents came from the old country, and you stuck with your own, whatever that meant to them. And I wasn't raised that way. I had the universe interrupted my growth pattern. Because if I had just been raised by my parents, I would have been a product, like so many people are, of a history that came from before you even got here. But something very unique happened for me. I was 10 years old. I'm in 5th grade. And they had an experiment. And the experiment went something like, was Monday, and they said everybody who's got brown eyes has to stay after school, clean up the garbage, do extra homework. Everyone with blue and green eyes gets to go home early. And I'm like, I don't know if you noticed, but my eyes are kind of hazel. They're kind of green. No, they called me brown eyes, and I'm so glad they did, because my week sucked. Again, it goes back to that why I don't like to pick up garbage stuff. And so we are cleaning up, and we're doing all this. We're getting it. And it's like the kids with blue and green eyes got to go home and got to eat lunch first. It's like, what the hell? It was like insanity, especially when you're a 10-year-old. And my parents didn't want to talk about it because our parents were obviously told not to talk about it. The end of the week, we're all called into the auditorium. Principal gets up and says, so how does it feel? And I'm one of the leaders of going, this doesn't work. And when we all calmed down, he said, so it's 1970. He said, it's funny because we live in a community where most of you are Jewish and Italian. Pizza, pasta, and matzah. You're all white. There was nobody Asian in my hometown. I don't think we had a Chinese restaurant. Well, we did have one, but that might have been it. There was nobody of color. There was nobody Mexican. It was Long Island in the 1970s. And I don't think we thought anything of it. I certainly didn't as a kid. But he made a point of how bad it felt because of something on your body that you couldn't change. And it became very clear that you cannot change your eye color, nor can you change your skin color. And all of a sudden, I don't know if it hit me at that moment, but it's hit me every moment since then for the last 50 years, that how bad it felt to be judged for something that I had no control over. I've been judged because I'm a woman. I've been judged for a lot of things. But that particular one was a physical trait that you cannot change. And I got to college, and I am the first one I put together. When I got to college, there was a black acting group and a white acting group. They were called Copa and Abda. Didn't actually make sense to me. At that point, I finally got to college. I had a couple of black best friends. I didn't see color. I didn't think about it. It was just whatever it was. It was kind of cool. It's like, oh, wow, you're black. That's kind of cool. I never met a black person before. I love it. And I ended up putting these two groups together. The black kids were doing the River Niger and the white kids were doing whatever. I was like, well, I have this play called The Me Nobody Knows, set on the streets of New York, and it needs diversity. And so I put them together, and it was a massive shock for people at that school. So much so they wrote about it. I have just got a plaque 37 years later congratulating me for doing this. Wow. And I did it because I'm just colorblind. And it was funny because I used to like to dance a certain way, and apparently white kids didn't dance that way. But all the black kids who hung out in these, they had these cool rooms in college, I'd be the only white face because I just like to really get down and dance. And so it never dawned on me. And then when I got Dexter into my life, he didn't like white people. He didn't understand why. His whole culture, the community was very, very black, and I spent a lot of time showing him what I had been shown, that it's people. And that you can be anything that you want to be if you believe. And it was hard. Let me tell you, it was really hard. But it was worth the journey. And then sadly, on July 21st, just because a kid wanted to get into a gang, my Dexter was walking from a haircut to church. You know, it's really funny because, not funny. We'd just given birth to twins. It was a little chaotic in our world. And I hadn't seen Dexter since the babies were born. I don't know what happened during that time. You know, he was kind of spreading his wings. He was getting to 20 years old and wanted to be on his own. And he lived South Central. He didn't drive. And taking a bus was hard. And we were kind of stuck where we were with the babies. He never met my children. And when I went to his bedroom, I mean, he was walking from a haircut to church. And a kid walked up behind and just shot him 10 times in the back and left him for dead. It's a lot of gunfire. It's a lot of anger from somebody for no reason at all. Didn't even know Dexter. And we actually set out to find the guy who did it. It took 3 years. He's spending 52 years to life in jail, which sucks because he has 2 kids. And the cycle continues. Anyway, it was tough. It's been tough. And it's been hard watching all of this going on right now. My head just hurts. And it hurts. Want to hear what even hurts more? When Dexter was 8 years old, my ex was running for city council. And we had all of these kids, all very diverse kids, actually friends of ours. Friends of ours had just adopted a little baby from China. We had Dexter, we had all kinds of kids. And we asked them to draw a day in their life. Well, Dexter drew a picture of a drive-by shooting with a kid dead on the street. And 12 years later, that would be him.
Wow. You talked about thinking positively and taking away ego, and there's actual science that shows that when you move forward in a positive way and you know you can, the neurons actually get out of their habits and they're ready to create new connections. But you have to follow through and you have to keep saying, I can, not I can't. There was a script thrown out at you.
You now qualify. I have to send you the award as you're now my biggest all-time fan. I've not had anyone do this much research. I love you. It's so funny. Yes, keep going.
Tell me about the script, why you said you can't, and the 3 things the hypnotist told you to make you say that you can.
You're going to have to come work for my company. Because I don't even think my kids want to listen to these stories anymore. And it's funny how many stories I ended up having in my life. I actually told my mom when I was 20 years old. My parents had never left this country. And I'd seen a lot of movies. Apparently, there was more to the country than where I lived, more to the world. And I said, Mom, I want to go see Europe. I want to see the world because I have this vision of myself that when I'm 83 years old, I'm going to sit around with all my kids and grandkids and just tell them the most magnificent stories. And I need to leave now because I don't have anything to talk about. And that was the beginning. You know, you haven't heard the story of running around through Europe and jumping off the back of a train in Figueres, Spain to see a Salvador Dali. There's all kinds of stories I've never told or haven't told yet. Wow. But that particular story, you know, this really speaks to how I wish I had more ego. So I got inspired one day to write. I wrote these monologues. As an actor, you're very strange. You spend a lot of time in other people's heads. And I wrote these 12 very odd monologues. And I called it, they were all in different shoes. Literally, I called it soul searching, S-O-U-L, a walk through life in shoes. And I wrote them all, but I was a little embarrassed about my writing, and I stuck it in a drawer and I never showed it to anybody. Well, I was doing a play, and Ted Lange, who played the bartender in the TV series Love Boat, was my director. And I said, come on over for a second. Can I read, like very sheepishly, can I read one of my monologues, see if you like it? And I did. And he said, this is wonderful. I said, you got another one? And I read that one. Next thing you know, I read all of them. And he said to me, this is brilliant. And I thought, oh, no. Thank you very much, but it's not brilliant. He said, well, it's brilliant enough that I would like to produce this and have you do this one-woman show. And I did. And it was amazing. And I won all kind of awards. But I will tell you, I was really shy about doing the whole thing because it was very nerve-wracking. Well, one of those monologues got the attention of Lily Tomlin, who I respect and love. And 20 years before that, I had watched her do her one-woman show called Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. I sat in a cheap seat because I couldn't afford anything better. And I watched this one woman with no costume changes, no scene changes, create 15 different characters and 15 completely different worlds that she was in. And I literally remember watching this and almost falling out of the chair because it was freaking brilliant beyond words. It was, I can't even describe to you how the only thing they had was sound effects. So if she was taking a tissue out of a box, you would hear, and all the things. I'm like, how did they do all? It was just unbelievable. So fast forward 20 years, this monologue got me to audition for her because she wanted to revise this play and have another actress play all of those characters. And I booked the part. I booked all the part. I was like, oh my God, they actually want me. This is crazy. And that means you have to create 15 different personas. You got a great Lud. Lud's from the middle, he's from kind of a tough guy. And he's got, oh, Lud, stop picking on our granddaughter, would you? And there were people all talking to each other in the play, and you're the only actress. You want to talk about a massive schizophrenia attack? Wow. Okay. So I create all the characters, and then you have to mime everything. Like if you're going to put your mascara on, you do everything. You drink out of a cup that's not there. All of this is in your head. Talk about somebody who needed to study the brain. I studied how you do that, how you believe. But the part that got me was the book was like this thick. It's 250 pages. You have to memorize it. And about a week into rehearsal, I couldn't memorize 3 words. I was like, I can't do this. I'm used to having a teleprompter, and I can't do this. And I went to the director on Friday and I said, I'm really sorry, but you have to fire me. I can't do this. And he looked at me and said, you're great at what you're, I said, you don't understand. I can't get the words in my head. And I'm terrified if I can't do this. And he gave me the name of, gave me a card. And he said, well, go talk to this person and then talk to me on Monday and see what you want to say. What do you want to do? And I found myself in a hypnotist chair. I've never, hypnotherapist. I've never done that before. I sat there and I said, I got this play that I'm doing. It's 250 pages long and I can't do it. He said, then go home. I said, excuse me? He said, I said, well, but I can't. He said, then go home. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm here to see if you can help me. He said, well, then can you do it? I said, no, I can't. He said, then go home. I said, all right, this is not working for me. What am I supposed to do here? He said, well, start saying that you can. And I said, okay, I can. He said, no, you said the words I can, but you meant I can't. I said, that's because I can't. And he says, he said, have you ever done this before? I said, done what? He said, you've done plays before, right? I said, yeah. When I was in high school and I was good at memorizing. He said, but you've done it before. You still have the same brain in your head. I'm like, okay. He said, well, then stand up and make a decision right now. Because either you're going to stay in my office or you're going to go home. And I'm like, well, no, I want to do this. This is an amazing opportunity. And they believed in me and I'm talented enough apparently. And yeah, I mean, I can do this. And he said, that's a start. He said, what did you say? I said, I can do this. He said, well, then like, tell yourself you can do it. And I'm, even as I said, I just got chills on my body going, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then I had to kind of convince myself. But then I said, all right, well, if I say that I can, and I mean that I can, I need some tools because I'm not sure how I ever did it before. And he said, well, I'll tell you the secret. Now, I think when somebody poses the secret, he said, you take out a pen and a piece of paper and you're going to take the script line by line and in cursive, you're going to write the line, you're going to write it again. And the third time you're going to write it in the air and hook it to the other line. You know how long it takes to do 250 pages handwritten, one line at a time? Okay, I went out. That's the first thing. And then the second thing he said is you're going to speak it into a tape recorder and you're going to listen to it every morning when you wake up and every night when you go to sleep. That's 5 hours of listening to this tape recorder. And he made me make a deal with him. He said, you can do this and I will see you opening night. And I went home with this sense of, if you say you can do something, you can do it. And so then I put in the work. It was an obscene amount of work. And I will tell you, to this day, as I've told this story a couple of times, I haven't really thought about it in years. I mean, look at all the words in this. Imagine that moment before you walk out every night. You're going to be on stage for 2.5 hours. There are no prompters. There is no help. If in the middle of it, I'm like, I don't remember what I was supposed to say. If that ever happened, what would have happened? So I remember every night before the very first line thinking, you're getting on a roller coaster that doesn't stop until it's over. We'll have ups and downs. You have the access to everything you know where the script is. It lives all over your head, like in space. You've got your characters, you plug and play, and it's going to work. And every night I would look up and go, please, dear God, let this work the way it's supposed to. And I would walk out there and remember saying that first line. And I don't remember much else until the end of the evening going, oh, you're right, we did it. We don't even know all what we did. But the brain is amazing. Now, 20 years later, I don't remember much of the play. I've opened that book. And I actually, in awe, go, wow, really? I can remember like 2 lines. Yeah. Like I remember Chrissy is an aerobics instructor. She's like, all my life I wanted to be somebody. Now I see I should have been more specific. Which is one of her. But there's 2 hours of other lines. I'm like, I don't even remember saying them. So apparently your short-term memory is a part that you can access when you need it. And I'm grateful that it works. And there's ways to make this happen. So the long and the short answer of that story is, tell us what you want. Tell the universe what you want. Infuse a little bit of why you want it. I wanted that very badly. I wanted to prove to myself and everyone that I was that talented. And the consequence of not doing it was absolute embarrassment and devastation. And so I didn't want that. So I said, I want this. I'll put in the work and I give myself permission to be wildly successful and do this. And I have another plaque in my office that called me a virtuoso. And I remember the moment that review came out, because you never really know what people think about you. You do it. And I looked at it and I thought, you almost missed that moment. You really have to believe in yourself because other people do, even if you don't. So knock it off. Stop playing so small.
Wow. Last question. I often use this statistic that I've gathered from Harvard and Gallup, and I put it together. And in a room full of 25,000 people who actually put up their hand to say that they want to make a change in their life, and you've coached thousands of people, the number of people in that room full of 25,000 people that actually make that change is 1. Why do you think that's the case?
You have to live a really bizarre life to want to work so hard, to sacrifice everything to help other people. Indira Gandhi, Gandhi himself, Mother Teresa, people who've given up their lives to really, you know those names of people that didn't even have a whole lot of money. How do you know them? Because their sacrifice was so big. I teach a lot of students now, and they all say, I want to help people. Well, guess what? That's just the definition of business. Every time you do a business transaction, you help person. That's what you, but what do you really want to do? And what are you willing to contribute to do that? I, until recently, had no interest in helping people. I'm an actress. I just want to act. I want to play. I want to dance. I want to enjoy my life. I gave birth to 2 little babies. I want to love on them. We traveled the world. We had an amazing time. I created SpinGyms. I've helped people along the way learn things and do things. But I remember making a deal with myself because 2 things happened for me. Number 1, being on an ashram doesn't hurt any. You get to learn a lot by watching a guru in action. But about 4 years ago, I was doing my life just fine. Actually, not really. I was a little frustrated. My personal relationship, my marriage was falling apart. I had invested in something very heavily that might have also fallen apart. I was doing a show, a fitness show. I was eating a lot of meat and not drinking as much water as I should have. And I find myself in New York City in a hospital alone in a lot of pain. I'm going to be shooting an infomercial the next day. I'm pretty high on myself. I'm pretty good at all this, right? I've never missed never in the middle of the night, I go for a home shopping. I've never missed a performance. I got a 100% track record here. 1 o'clock in the morning, and I start screaming. And I'm in a severe amount of pain. So much so that the hospital put me in a cab, not even an ambulance. They just threw me out of the hospital and said, get out of here. And I ended up in a hospital. And it's the weirdest moment because it was right after the hurricane there. And the hospital is kind of like the entrance to the hospital was like an office building. And I thought, this might be coma. They're coming for my organs. This was not a good moment. And I got whisked into this hospital. And next thing, they were running batteries of tests. I remember screaming in unbelievable amounts of pain, high on morphine at some point. And what they concluded after about 6 hours is that I had a kidney stone. And here's how nuts I am. I've got my cell phone in the gurney on the way to emergency surgery about 5 o'clock in the morning, telling my producers, hey guys, I'm not going to make my 8 o'clock call. Sorry, I'll be in by about noon. That's where my brain is going.
Wow.
The next thing I remember is a whole room full of people standing over me going, she's got very low blood pressure. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, don't worry about it. I had low blood pressure. I pushed out 2 twins. I'm very healthy. What they meant to say in recovery is I had no blood pressure and that I was dying. And because what had happened was that I was septic. I'd waited too long. And the surgery was fine, but I was dying. And they pumped you full of all kinds of stuff to keep you alive. And people die all the time from this, and you never hear from them again. And I was in New York, away from my kids, away from my family, and terrified. And I was there for 10 days. And I didn't see my kids. I didn't even want them to come up. I don't even remember why, but because the pain was so excruciating. And I was so out of my head that at some point I remember thinking, and look, my bed was next to the window, looking out to the sky and making that deal that you go, if I get to stay here, and I have no intention of leaving, just to be really clear, what do I need to do? Who do I get to be? What difference do I get to make? And I will tell you, it became pretty clear. And it's funny because I even had a SpinGym with me in my room. My roommate, if you Google SpinGym in hospital, she was a 71-year-old woman who had a back surgery. I really understood at that moment that I was here to do something powerful. Now, fast forward the next year, this was not good. Things were going along okay. I'm in California, and I somehow, it was Christmas time. My kids had just arrived. I couldn't wait to spend Christmas with them. And the day my kids arrived, I couldn't stop throwing up, like bright yellow. And for a day, that's all I'm doing. And I had no idea what was going on. And a dear friend of mine, a doctor, came all the way up and said, you need to get to the hospital. And I did. And they did an endoscope. And on the way out of that endoscope, high on whatever they put you under with, the doctor turned to me. He says, you have stomach cancer and you're going to be needing chemo. And it was Christmas time. He said, we took a biopsy, but I haven't really told this story ever, but we'll get the biopsy back in a couple of days and we'll proceed from there. So I'm in my hospital room. It was Saturday, actually. It was a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, nothing happened. Some Wednesday was Christmas. And that's pretty devastating news that I think a lot of people have, and they've been shocked by that. And again, I had this feeling going, I'm not ready to. I checked myself out of the hospital that Tuesday against all the doctor's recommendations. Again, I don't really care. At some point, I'm very out of the box thinker, and I went home with my kids and I said, we're Jewish, but we're celebrating Christmas. And because I'm going to do this at home with you guys. And the craziest thing, the phone rings. It's Wednesday morning. And it's the doctor. And he says, good news. You don't have stomach cancer. You have H. pylori, some antibiotics, and you'll be fine. Really? Did that just happen? So I walk in a world where I'm pretty damn grateful all the time. I have a lot of family and friends who are not here to say what I'm saying. I've lost a lot of people that I love so dearly. So that's the decision, the declaration. I get to be 1 out of 25,000, and I know it. And everybody in my world knows it. And it's not about my ego, but it's that all of the stories that I just told you, because I haven't even really told you all the ones. I haven't told you what it's like to stand on the top of the Las Vegas shooting and watch 55 people being murdered beneath you. I was an eyewitness to that. I'm almost like a back seat going, what's the ride that we're on, my girl? And I'll tell you, enough of this has happened and I've witnessed enough that all it allows me to do is qualify to be heard. I care enough now. I teach a lot of people. I heal a lot of people. I have an ability to take people who've been raped, traumatized, tortured, and make them never think about that again. Wow. That's kind of a cool power. I guess you should use that as often as you can. And I have no real hidden agenda. I want to enjoy my life. I love the man that I'm with very much. I love my children very much. And I really do enjoy getting these people saying amazing things about me. And they do. And the little girl inside of me is just going, yo, we matter. That's so freaking cool. You go on, girl. See, we went through all that shit for something. And that's all the ego is. It's like, that's kind of like, yeah, we did it. We mattered. I used to think before Facebook happened, I was such a freaking loner that I thought, shit, when you die, no one's coming to your funeral because your parents are dead. Nobody knows you even exist. And then Facebook came out. Yay. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. The one thing you did that I'm very proud of, people remember me on my birthday and they'll miss me when I'm gone. And that's kind of cool. And if you want to hope for anything more than that, you're an idiot.
Wow. Amazing interview. Thank you so much for these stories. Lots of talking points here. How do people get a hold of you?
They don't. Go to Forbes360.com. Mm-hmm. There's a whole list of things that I do right there. It's not a website. It's actually just a whole thing you can find on your phone or on the web, because I do a lot of things, from giving you free gifts that are there, inviting you to my Sunday masterclass to how to get a SpinGym. This is my co-publisher, and I'm going to put him on hold for a second because we have a new book coming out, and I'll tell you about it. We created in a very record amount of time a book called One Habit for Entrepreneurial Success. Amazing. I'll call you right back, Steve. Right now, if you go to ForbesRileyBook.com, you want to get a hold of me, come and be part of our mailing list. I'm going to tell you about where the pre-party is going to be. It's all virtual. It's all online. We have massive celebrities going to be in this book. All these crazy, amazing friends of mine, from martial arts stars to movie stars to TV stars to CEOs. They're all in this. 135 people are in this book. It's the largest book for entrepreneurial success ever.
Amazing.
And we put it together less than 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
Right. That's the part of the story that I'm telling you. You want to be part of the absolute amazing world, you just say yes to me. Just say yes, be part of this crazy train. I had a lot of people say yes. And yeah, and so that's, come to Forbes360.com or just reach out on social media.
Okay.
I have 2 million followers on Facebook. I got to tell you, I talk to a lot of them all the time because I love this. I don't have to be the loner anymore.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really
appreciate it. By the way, Sunil, where do you live?
I'm in London, Ontario, Canada.
All right. Well, it's a little hard to get this to Canada, but you, my friend, need to get yourself a SpinGym.
I will get one.
Sitting in the box, doing your podcast. This is a must for you.
I will definitely get one. I will definitely be a customer of yours. I appreciate it.
Oh, not even a customer. We'll figure out how to get you one. You just need to have one.
Okay. Thank you so much. I know you're busy. You've got a mastermind and you got to talk to your co-producer there, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You are so very welcome. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Annie.
And that does it for my interview. In the show notes, I have a link to a website page where you can find out more about my guest, as well as a link to my free 7-day challenge that's going to help you find out how to leverage your intuition to find a solution to a particular problem that you've had issues solving in the past. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and you haven't subscribed to the podcast show, please make sure that you do so that you don't miss another intuitive wake-up call moment with those who are eager to share their story. Thanks for listening, and I hope you join me for the next episode.